How's it going, everybody? Trying to pin this comment here for us. There we go. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Creative Corner. Thanks for joining us today. Awesome. What's up, guys? Just letting a couple more people roll in. We'll get this thing started. We got our first guest today. I'm super excited to talk to him and talk all things photo, video, and lighting. Awesome, guys. Thanks for hopping on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So today's Creative Corner, I'm super excited to announce that we have our first guest. So we have Simon, and I think it's Eisenbach is how we pronounce his last name. So we got Simon Eisenbach here, and we're going to talk all things video, photo, and lighting. And he is a avid traveler, and he does documentary work in third world countries, and he has taken his lights with him, and he has really cool photos of him using his stuff. What's up, Cali G5? Awesome, guys. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get Simon on here, and then we will start with our questions for him. And then feel free to ask us anything, guys, throughout the live stream. We have a sheet pulled up here to where we can actually get those questions fed in. So if we don't answer them right off the bat, then we will for sure answer them within the live stream today. Awesome. All right, so we went ahead and got Simon on. Let's see if we can get him pulled up. Looks like we're connecting. What's up, Simon?
What's going on, sir?
How are you, brother?
I'm proud of you for announcing my last name right, or saying my last name right.
Yeah, I was typing it earlier, and I was like, yeah, it's definitely Eisenbach, but it's a really cool, elegant last name. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's funny because the original spelling is Ajzenbaczk.
Yeah, I wouldn't have said that.
Yeah, it's one time Ellis Island made life a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. I think everyone else does too. How have you been, man? It's been a while. I haven't seen you in about a year because last time we hung out, I guess it was the first time we had met. We were at NAB 2019, and that's pretty much what we should be right now.
We should be there right now, or we would have just ended. But yeah, it's been pretty crazy. I was actually in Africa when all of the COVID stuff and like the borders started to shut down.
Yeah.
And I almost got stuck there and basically had to cut a project short, and then all sorts of headaches getting back to the US, and basically was on the last Delta flight from Europe to the Northeast.
Oh, I remember following your story and just being like, I hope he makes it home.
I did. It was when we got into the airport at where I was, they had to do like special check-in where a supervisor had to call an Air France number to get us, anyone with an American passport had to be like specially checked in.
Wow.
Then after you got checked in, like it was just more headache. And then when we got to Paris, they combined 3 flights into one going to not my original destination.
Oh, and then you had to figure out from there how to get home.
Yeah. Well, thankfully it was, originally we were supposed to go into Boston. It switched to JFK, which I was originally coming in and out of Newark. So instead of taking a puddle from JFK to Newark, I just took trains home.
Yeah, that works. You're lucky that you live in an area where they have train access like that. I mean, all the major cities only.
I moved to a place where I had that access for a reason.
Yeah, that's smart of you. You're up in, is it like upstate New York?
No, so I was, a year ago when we were chatting at NAB, I was in upstate New York.
Okay.
But I now live basically on the New Jersey-Pennsylvania border between Philly and New York City.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
So I'm an hour from Newark Airport, and I'm in 45 minutes from Philly Airport. And if I take the train into Manhattan, I can be there in like an hour and a half.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
You're lucky to live in those types of places, man. Well, That's really cool. My first question was tell us a little bit about yourself, but you just did, so that's perfect. I want to chat about, we're going to get into, your travels more, and we're going to talk about that and kind of technical stuff, but
Yeah.
how did you get involved in the film industry, and kind of what do you consider yourself? Like, are you kind of all the above, one-man band, and how did you start?
So I first picked up a camera because, like, in a serious fashion, because it was the only elective that was available for a fine arts elective my senior year of college.
Okay.
And then at the time that we got handed a Nikon D40, and I started to like photography more. I was working a job where I was working so much overtime that basically I turned my overtime money into new camera gear, which turned into the Nikon D7000, which shot video.
Right.
And so I just got bored one day and started toying around with video. And then I got, again, same job, traveling and being on the road so much, I got $275 in gift cards from a hotel rewards program.
Nice.
And I flipped that into Apple gift cards and paid $25 for Final Cut Pro.
There you go.
And so that's how I started video editing and starting to like put stuff together.
Very, very cool.
But the traveling part of what I do, which is why I went into the industry full time, I started back in 2007, which was my freshman year of college. And I was going to Burkina Faso, West Africa with my dad, working on, that one was a library, but I got into that world because my dad built a hospital in West Africa.
Okay.
And so I started traveling with him before I ever touched a camera.
Okay, so that was kind of your end to traveling into like
Yeah.
Ethiopia and Africa and these places that you've done some documentary work, and
Yeah.
and we'll kind of get into that. That's really funny how you, I mean, it's not really funny, it's really clever, I should say, how you took some hotel rewards gift cards and then flipped them to Apple, and then you got your Final Cut. That's a pretty awesome way to do it.
I joke that I've made a astronomical amount of money off of a $25 investment because
yeah, totally.
I do more video than photo, and I, except for a 3-month stint when I tried to go to Premiere, have only been a Final Cut editor.
I was about to ask you, are you still using Final Cut?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
I tried going to Premiere and it was just so buggy. This was in 2016. That I just was like, I'm going back to what I'm comfortable with. And Final Cut's become so powerful that it's not even like back when I first started, it was definitely a lesser to Premiere edit, like an NLE.
Right.
But nowadays they've got so much packed into that it's a super powerhouse piece of software.
Totally. I would agree with you on that. I went from Sony Vegas, remember Sony Vegas by chance? Yeah. And then went to that, and then I went to Final Cut Pro, and then when they switched to 10, I finally went to Adobe in college, and I've been using Premiere ever since. But I think it's whatever you're comfortable with and whatever your workflow speeds up. I don't think there's a wrong, you know what I mean? I think it's how efficient you can work. And no, I think that's really cool. Also, Cody Warner uses Final Cut as well still, so I'm always kind of giving him stuff about that.
It's one of those things that it just works. Like, all of my friends that use Premiere talk about how buggy Premiere can get, and I'm just like, it works fine for me. I don't.
Yeah, I was editing right before this, and I was having glitches. So it's funny you say that.
Yeah, it's never fun when you have those issues.
For sure. Well, do you consider yourself like a filmmaker, a photographer, kind of a YouTuber? Because you kind of do all the above, and then obviously you edit your own stuff as well, as you mentioned. So you're kind of a one-man band.
I've started to call myself what I took this from a friend who uses it from the developer world. I started calling myself a full stack content creator. So like, you think of full stack developer and there's someone that can do pretty much anything. And that's kind of the way that I look at it, is like, I post on YouTube weekly. I also make commercial content. I'm also a freelance camera operator for hire. And I do miscellaneous photo and video work. I've done everything from second shooting weddings, which I've never been a wedding photographer, but when you got to make money, you got to make money.
Gotta do it, man.
All the way up through doing work for Dell and G-Tech and some other massive companies like that.
Right.
And so it's just I've done this, that, and the other thing.
No, that's really cool. I think it's clever to not really consider yourself into one role. And as freelancers, doing a lot of that client work, that's what pays the bills. You know, you
Right.
mentioned weddings because that's when desperate times call for desperate measures, and then we leave that to the wedding professionals when we're not covering that, right? Because
Yeah.
there's so many good wedding photographers and videographers out there.
So
We had a
many.
question. Yeah, and they're super talented. I have such a high level of respect for people who do weddings full time because it's very stressful. We had a question roll in. How does DaVinci Resolve work with you, like as far as using Final Cut?
I've never really used DaVinci Resolve.
Okay.
I've toyed around with it a little bit, but when it comes to actual editing, and I want to get it done and get it out of the way,
Yeah.
I'm able to get the looks that I need with Final Cut's color tools,
Yeah.
and so I don't really leave Final Cut anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have to, you don't have to, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how are you doing a lot of your graphics work?
It's usually Motion VFX or Pixel Film Studios plugins. And then if I need something really intense, I will either hire somebody to make it in After Effects for me, or I will make it in Motion.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, like
I think
most
the
of
plugin
most of the
official
stuff most of the stuff I do, I can get away with plugins because
Okay.
it's nothing crazy. But I've also done jobs where I did a job. This wasn't international, but I did this massive thing where it was like, what could the future look like if we got this massive state grant in the community I used to live in? And we
Right.
literally animated buildings into our cityscape over live video shots. And
Right on.
so it was one of those things that I was not even going to try to do that myself. We subbed out the animation to someone in town that's worked on Hollywood films,
Right.
and he was killer with it. And he did it so well that we actually had to make the blended in so well. Like he blended the building so it looked like they'd been there. That
Okay.
the people watching it that were like doing all the grant work were like, "What did he do?"
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when there's a budget for that type of stuff, people are going to knock that out of the park. And
Yeah.
I look forward to shoots like that when there's enough budget to actually have someone and hire someone to do graphics work like that. So no,
Totally.
that's really cool, man. Someone just mentioned no Fusion. So are you not using Fusion plugins?
I have
Software.
never heard of Fusion plugins. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, check that out for sure. But I want to talk about your traveling and you going to these third world countries and these places where video, and you kind of the guy walking around with the camera. Kids love that stuff. It's
Oh
amazing. It's
gosh.
something they've not really seen before. And I've watched a lot of your videos and I've seen a lot of the photos that you had with there's kids around you and things like that, and they're holding the lights and things, and it's really really cool. Tell us about your travel experience.
So, like I said earlier, I started traveling in 2007, and basically in 2012, I quit my full-time job and moved to Taiwan for 6.5 months, working for a coffee shop that basically I was doing their media and marketing. I was friends with the guy who started it, and that was really where I started to do photo and video stuff and a more full-time basis.
Right.
And I realized very quickly, living in the middle of Taipei, I did not want to be in a major city. So, and also I kind of liked the impact that you can have in developing countries a little bit more. And so I wanted to be able to do like shorter term stuff that I could come back home, work, go back over, so on and so forth. And I came back at the end of 2012, basically landing in New York as Hurricane Sandy hit.
Yikes.
And so I got stuck in New York for that. Ended up just doing like disaster restoration to make money right away. And my dad calls me and he's like, "Hey, I want to go to Africa. Um, I'm going in January. Your mom wants someone to go with me. Do you want to go? I'm paying for everything." Yep.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
And that trip ended up being a little crazy where I broke away from my dad and was just driving around the country with these two guys with the NGO that we were with, but they were just checking on different sites, doing a couple small projects, and I was just talking to them about what their struggles were, that kind of thing, figuring
Right.
out what their pain points were. And a lot of it had to do with marketing and the fact that they didn't have the ability to make quality visual content because these are guys that do like construction, business development, that kind of stuff. So it's creative is not in their wheelhouse. And so that was when I realized that like I wanted to do more of that and keep that going and start to introduce media into it versus like the construction that I'd been doing with my dad.
Okay.
And so I've done that was a big one, just for getting me started. And then it's just been like little things here and there for the next couple of years. And usually in West Africa, I did do a quick project in Thailand. But then like my first real big project that I did was 2017. I went into DR Congo where we got dropped off by a bush plane at the hospital that we were working with.
Oh, wow.
And when I say remote, like we were out in villages where they see a car once every 6 months.
Okay. Yeah.
But and when I put the drone up in the air,
Oh,
everyone freaked out and had no clue what was going on. And then all of the like village leaders in every village that we put it up at were like, what is this? Like how, like staring at the view in awe of the fact that they had never seen above the trees.
For sure.
And so they were able to see things that they had never done before. And that was a super fun one where we were able to create enough content that I'm still creating content, editing for them today. Like we captured enough stuff. A lot of what I try to do with these bigger projects is capture like 3 to 4 years worth of content, and then we can just edit it as there's budget or need over time. Just because the expensive part is getting there. Like the flight from Entebbe, Uganda into the Congo costs just as much as the flight from New York to Entebbe, Uganda.
Right. Okay. That's crazy to think about, man. Did you have any challenges like getting your gear into those areas, and how did you recharge your gear and things like that?
So the charging is usually solar. When I'm overseas, a lot of these places have solar. One of the benefits of being off grid and the fact that technology is shifting is they're starting to get some really impressive solar arrays in some of these communities. The hospital was supposed to have, and you want to talk about challenges, when we were planning, we were supposed to have this brand spanking new 6 battery, like 14 panel solar array that we were charging off of. Get there to find out we essentially had 1 car battery and 2 solar panels. That was like our capability of charging.
Right.
So we ended up on the Congo project having to shoot everything in 1080, not because we didn't have the storage space, but because if we shot 4K, the amount of time it would take to offload would kill the laptops so fast that we couldn't offload all of the data.
Wow. These are things that we would never think of when we're here and we have power at any resource. That is absolutely insane.
Yeah. And we're dealing with like how much, like you got to have all the redundancies and everything. And so it's like bringing all sorts of spare gear, but we're not actually using half of it.
Right.
Like the project that we talked about in Ethiopia, and I've done everything from like 1-man band to like a 3 or 4-man crew.
Right.
And so a perfect example of like bigger scale production for Ethiopia, we had 3 guys. We had an FS5, 3 Sony A7, 3 A7 IIIs, 2 A7R3s, and an A6600 and an RX100. Plus, we had 2 70-200s, 2 24-105s, a 24-70, 2 16-35s, 90 macro, 50, 35, 24 prime.
You were covered, fully covered.
Yeah. And half of that is like if something broke or got stolen, like some gear was always left at the guest house. That way, if we got robbed,
Right.
Hard drives are always kept in multiple rooms in different locations. Like
you're double backing up everything, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Very cool.
Full redundancy on that stuff. But yeah, so we're carrying a lot of stuff, but the average day we were shooting with 2 A7 IIIs and 2 A7R3s in the FS5.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah.
we weren't using a chunk of the gear, but we had to have it because if something broke, we had to be able to grab something else after.
Right. Yeah. How are you getting around out there? Do you have like, is there like a Jeep with you're hauling everything in? Are you walking? Is it all in one spot? Is it one area?
Every project's different. Congo, for the most part, we walked around the hospital compound, and then we had a Land Cruiser. Land Cruisers and Land Rovers are like the creme de la creme of what people are using over there as far as
Yeah.
transport. And when I say Land Cruiser, it's basically Toyota's version of the Land Rover Defender.
Yeah. With
Not
all with the top off, right? Or
no,
just
we still got the top on. I mean,
yeah,
we're talking more like the SUV type
got
ones
it.
than the like. This isn't like the Safari type trucks.
Got it.
This is the like the haul around people stuff, you name it. And it's literally just Toyota's version of the exact same truck. They're all made with the essential like the same 6 screws that you can rip apart with 4 wrenches.
Got it. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
Well,
and
that's
it's
go
even
ahead.
funny, like in the Congo, they make sure that their trucks have no electronics in them because what they'll have to do during the rainy season is literally open up the hoods and hose out the motor compartment because so much mud gets into it.
Oh wow! Just because all the roads are dirt and they turn to mud in the rainy
Yeah,
season.
yeah,
Unreal. Yeah, that's again, that's stuff that we don't think about. So that is really cool, man. It's super interesting because I've been to a handful of places, Japan and Thailand and things and filmed, but I've never been in like those remote areas that you're in. So it's kind of
yeah,
a whole different mindset when you're over there.
yeah.
Um, so what's one thing you learned while traveling to those types of places?
One thing I've learned, oh gosh, there's so many things I've learned.
Yeah,
Probably the biggest thing I've learned is always showcase people the way you would want to be showcased.
okay.
So like you hear a lot of people talk about poverty porn and that kind of stuff, and you see a lot of imagery with like kids all covered in dirt and like that kind of stuff. And that stuff doesn't like appeal to me. And I
Right.
don't think that it showcases them in their best light. And so the kind of the way that I've taken it is would I want this image taken of myself if I'm about to take a photo?
Right. Yeah.
And that's been one of the biggest things for me that is like has influenced how I approach a lot of things because it just makes you think a little bit extra, and also always ask for consent. Consent is a huge thing, and if you're doing that kind of project, you will have some sort of translator that you can talk through to get their approval.
Right. Yeah. That's something that I've never really thought about because again, you're coming in with drones and all this cool camera equipment and people love it, but they might not necessarily want to be on camera just because they like it, right? So
Well,
there's
and
a
there's
language barrier maybe too, like you were saying. So there's a
yeah.
lot of factors there.
Well, and there's communities that think that technology like steals their soul in 100% seriousness. Like they
Uh,
think that if they get their photo taken, that their soul is going to be literally taken from them.
wow.
And so you have to respect their culture because you are not in your culture now. And you
Right.
have to you have to again, if you were in their shoe, would you want your soul taken for
No.
everything you believe? And so that's yeah. And so that's a
Yeah.
huge thing.
Man, can you imagine if we believed like that? We would be so soulless right now. It's it's crazy to think about that, and that's a point that I actually had never thought of, and just the different types of cultures and things. And again, I think that approval is like a really good tip. So where's this stuff living at? Where's the is it on your besides your YouTube and things like what are you actually making this for?
So every NGO is different how they use it. E4 project that I did work with in the Congo, they used video and photo content as far for a grant proposal for a new truck. They were literally like submitting this stuff to get like a $22,000 grant.
Okay.
They also use this stuff for like galas, social media on their stuff, direct for uh, like direct to presentations. So Dan, who's the development director, showcased one video at a church, walked off stage, and got handed a $5,000 check. Because
Amazing.
the guy was like, you showed me what the need was, so on and so forth. And then other organizations like Yezel Minch Project, who I was in Ethiopia with, they're using it more in like email. They're putting it on their Facebook. Those are kind of their two main ways they're using content right now. And then they also are in the process of putting together a calendar that involves the images that we shot.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. So is that considered like more, is that non-for-profit or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
everyone that I've worked with so far is considered a 501c3 nonprofit in the U.S.
Got it. Very cool. No, that's really fun, man. I think that's just a whole different style of filmmaking maybe a lot of people aren't used to. So it's really cool to hear you talk about some of those things. So Litra posted a photo today of you to advertise this live stream, and it's of you putting your hand through a window, and you are trying to, it looks like you're on a Sony, you're messing with some camera settings. There's like a LitraPro in frame. There's like a torch up high, I believe, or vice versa. There she is. I got my, that's my baby. Tell us about that photo.
That photo is me capturing women sewing. So one of the things, Yezel and Minch Project is a orphan and at-risk youth organization. And one of the things that they do on top of that is parents that are, it's usually the mother of kids in their program, are able to get trained on certain trades. Okay. One of them is how to sew, so that way they can go out and start to like make money sewing things. And so we were trying to think of unique ways to showcase these women learning how to sew. And we were in this really dark room, and basically I was trying to use a slow shutter to highlight the like fabric moving and stuff like that. So I had to be locked down onto something. So I was actually on the Platypod. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
So I was on a Platypod with a mini ball head just because of the amount of stuff in that room. That was the only way I could get into the position I needed to be.
Yeah.
And then I literally had the LitraPro. Basically, for all of that project, I had a LitraPro with the little rubber diffusion cover on an articulating arm with a NATO clamp. Yeah,
so
like
clamp it on
that was literally attached to me at all times.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was most of the places we went into had something I could clamp the NATO clamp onto. Whether it was like a piece of wood that was like holding the roof up, whether it was the window open, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so a lot of these dark rooms that are super small, I was able to change the room completely by just adding this little bit of light.
That's
and
amazing.
So I was actually shooting, and I can send you guys the photo to post after this of the actual final image. And it's this woman at a sewing machine, and her arms are going up like this with a bunch of fabric, and it was about a 1 second exposure. So you see this like wispiness of the fabric, but because of the slow shutter, you can still see her perfectly in focus.
Yeah, because you have light in there too, right? She's holding still. That's really cool. I'd love to see that actually. No, it's a really cool image, and it leaves like a mystery of what is the lens looking at. So I wanted to ask you about that, and not to mention the products are in there, and you can see them clamped up there. I think that would probably be extremely handy the whole time that you're there, because they're using natural light sources through windows, and in dark corners like that, you were able to just clamp that on anything. I think that's huge.
I mean, and there was rooms where it's literally the window is like the size of a laptop screen. Like a 15-inch laptop, like that is literally the window that's all the light they have in a room. And I'm like, I don't know how you can see right now, because I was still, even with the light, like the Litra at 100% in those rooms, I'm still shooting at like 1200, 1500 ISO.
Right. Yeah, and you have Sony too, so you got the best low light source there you possibly can as far as cameras go. Yeah, and I'm trying to avoid. Typically, I try to avoid going over 5,000 or 6,000 ISO. Yeah. And so it's one of those situations where it's like, how can I make this without having to go crazy? Because yes, I can still get a fairly clean image, but I'd prefer to keep it cleaner as clean as possible. Sure. Yeah, always, right? And especially if you went from 4K to 1080 and you're just trying to
Yeah.
hold that as much as you can.
Pretty much everything, unless I run into a situation like we did in Congo, I shoot 4K.
Yeah.
It's either because of the fact that I shoot everything on Sony, it's 4K 24 or 1080 60.
Yeah, maybe we'll get that A7S Mark III one day with that, 4K to 6K at 60 to 120. Who knows?
If I can get 4K 120, I will be a happy man.
I mean, they're already pushing 6 and 8K on Black Magics, and like Canon's the new mirrorless series. So I'm just like, man, Tony, where are you?
I don't know how the R5 is going to be able to not turn into a toaster if they're shooting 8K raw internally. I don't, unless the only way that I can see it is if they're interpolating 4K up to 8K afterwards.
Yeah, totally. I know what you mean. Like up-resing it or something.
Yeah.
You're right. That thing that's going to have a fan in it. That thing's not big
enough
to have the right size fan.
Right.
Now, we could talk about gear all day.
That's true.
But speaking of gear, I want to talk about how, how's Litra? Obviously, you talked about clamping the light in dark places when you travel, but how has Litra kind of helped you accomplish some of your lighting goals?
It lets me take lights, first of all. A lot of my trips, I have to be so lightweight that I'm not really carrying lights. In Ethiopia, we had 3 LitraPros and 2 of the Westcott ice lights. And the ice lights, we only were able to use them for interviews, and that was because we were able to fully set up a room.
Wow.
The ice light, the LitraPros were always on us, and if I wasn't clamming it to something, I had someone holding it somewhere in a room, that kind of thing, just to get that little bit of extra light. And it's small enough that we can literally throw them in our pockets and not think about it. Because I'm always wearing cargo pants. And so I kind of do like certain things in certain pockets. So one pocket is SD cards in LitraPro. Another pocket is spare batteries.
Right.
And so it's one of those that, like, I don't have to think about it. I know it's there. It's always going to be there when I'm in the field.
Yeah, you can just put your hand in one of your pockets and grab it out. You can't put an ice light in your back pocket unless you're wearing like Jinkos or something from back in the day.
You'd have to wear like some custom pant, and it would just look really weird pulling that out of your pants pocket. Yeah.
It's like a lightsaber, That's what ice lights remind me of a little bit.
Exactly. So it's one of those things that I can, and 2 of them live in my camera bag at all times, and so it's one of those that it's powerful and small enough that I can do whatever I need, like whatever with, and because I know it's there. And if I want to get a slightly bigger source, I carry the quarter 20 male to male adapter, and I literally just screw 2 of them together and then can make like a slightly larger source. It's still not a big source, but I can get more power and a little bit more out of it than I would otherwise.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's funny you mentioned that, because now Litra just released the cage, and now you can hook up to like 4 to 6 Pro.
What is this?
Yeah. Well,
I haven't seen this.
It's on their website. Check it out after we're done. But it's
all right. I'll check it
cool.
out.
It's like you can hand hold it, or you can mount it to a light, so you can have up to like 4 studios or 4 pros or 6 pros on.
Oh gosh, I'm gonna have a look at this.
Yeah, and can you imagine having all that at 100%? That's just blinding. But
you'd definitely be blind.
Well, speaking of accessories, what is like one of your favorite accessories in the line? Obviously, you haven't seen the cage yet, but what do you use?
My most used is a little rubber diffusion thing that comes with it.
Sure.
But I also use the barn doors a lot.
Yeah.
Those are probably my most used, in part because I like the softbox. I've used a little bit, but a lot of times I'm just trying to throw light into a space really quick that I won't necessarily have time to like put the softbox together. And I can't just like leave it together. It's got to be taken apart. Taken apart and put into my bag.
Right.
And so, whereas like the barn doors and the diffusion, I can just pop it, open the barn doors, or just turn it on if it's with the diffusion cover, and I'm already off and going. Because some of the times when I'm over there, I don't have time to make, like, I don't have setup time sometimes. When we were in Ethiopia, we had one situation where we showed up in the morning and the program director was like, oh, this person's here to be interviewed and he has to leave in 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. So then you're
Like,
like, okay, I'm good.
like we literally, like, the saving grace is that a lot of times with the FS5, I'll fly it over there and then kit it out and leave it kitted out and then carry it outside bags the whole time.
Got it.
There's one photo that I have floating around of me with the FS5 strapped to the front of me. That's a lot of times how it looks with the FS5 if I'm carrying that. And that way it's just handy. And those types of things save us because the FS5 turns on so fast. It's literally like flick on and you can start filming.
Yeah,
within a minute.
It's like the FS7, right, where it's got the handle on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically the way that I rig it is I put a Peak Design anchor on the top handle on the back, like the back mounting point.
Yeah.
And then I use one of their old clutches, which is like the wristlet. And then I hang the wristlet off my backpack and then top anchor it onto it. So it's almost like a Ghetto Easy Rig.
I get that. I get that. Hey, whatever works, man. As long as you got a lens cover on, I won't freak out.
If I'm not shooting, I do have lens covers on.
Yeah, especially because of the dust, I'm sure, out there if it's dry. I bet it's brutal on gear.
Yeah, I can send you photos, and I mean I can show. There's a image that I can send later that is where I was in Africa recently. That tin roofs look red.
Wow.
Because of dust.
Yeah. And you're like always having your pump on you and it's just not doing it. Well, so obviously, like I said, we could talk about gear for forever, and it sounds like you love just the filmmaking process, but out of all of it, like, pre-production, production, post-production, what's your favorite part of the process? There's so many aspects of filmmaking and photography. What is your favorite?
So this is going to sound strange. My favorite thing is seeing what organizations are able to do with the content afterwards. The big thing, my goal in life is to work with NGOs to help people have more sustainable lives in their homes, in their home communities. And seeing organizations be able to raise thousands and thousands of dollars to help thousands of lives. Like the hospital in Congo is the only hospital for 275,000 people. And they don't have running water. So anything that they can do to help improve their hospital will literally change thousands upon thousands of lives in a matter of days.
Right. And so do you go into those places with an agenda, like in pre-production, or do you just go sometimes and just shoot, like spray and pray, and then you can make a story after? So
a lot of it is we will look at what programs they're trying to fund and grow. And then after we have like a list of like what they're trying to show and what they're trying to do more in, we'll look at what aspects of the programs kind of overlap. And so we'll try and capture the things that meet the highest priority programming that we can then capture and go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So it's basically like ballpark showcasing their programs versus like having like, we need this shot, we need this shot, we need this shot. It's like at the hospital, it's like we need OR, we need pediatrics, we need the clean water. And then at the YZM, it's like we need their preschool, we need kids in school, we need their feeding program, we need the sewing and adult program. Like that's what our list is versus like we have this specific whatever.
Yeah, it's not like close up of women sewing. It's like we need to just capture every angle we can. And I think if you have time when you're over there, I know production schedules always vary, but I think if you have the time, just go in and doing as much as you can, because that footage, it sounds like, can always be repurposed. And and you can add it into something else of a shot that hasn't been used.
I mean, we shot in Ethiopia. We shot 8,600 images in 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. So what's next for you? Do you have any thing planned? I mean, I know everything is on hold right now. Did you have stuff planned that got delayed? Obviously, you had to come back from your trip.
Yeah.
But
Right now, my goal is to get back and finish that project, which I can't say exactly where I was
yeah,
because of some security reasons. But
copy that.
I want to get back over there and finish it. But we're going to probably have to raise more money just because of the fact that we got cut short and had all of the expenses to go with it already happen.
Yeah.
And then going a little bit off the lines into a realm that I'm digging a little bit more into, I may be going to South Africa and filming big cats and doing some conservation stuff.
Okay, why don't you give me a holler when that happens, and I can help you out. It's gonna be like Tiger King, except in a good way.
I don't want to ever be associated with Tiger King. but yeah, so it's going to depend on when the borders open and what like restrictions are looking like with travel before I can really say what I'm working on in the future. There was plans for doing some more edits for E4 project around a coffee plantation they're trying to start, but
Right.
all of that stuff got put on hold because they are trying to deal with what is the future going to look like, because all of their stuff has changed, because everything in the Congo has changed. And yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. And it is hard for you to answer that, I know. And I had projects put on hold, and I'm just hoping that, things get back to normal in the safest way possible, and we can just keep
Yep.
continuing. So
Yeah.
let's wrap it up here shortly, but I do want to ask you, what's one piece of advice that you could give to someone maybe looking to get into the industry, or who hasn't started or is in the industry and maybe struggling right now? Like, what's one piece of advice that we could leave the viewers with?
You have to be patient. You have to patiently hustle.
Yeah.
Because I say it that specific way because it takes a lot of time to get to where you want to go. Like, I'm not even where I want to be yet. But you
Right.
also have to be willing to go out there and do things that are gritty, and you just have to put in the time. And it's not necessarily like traveling like I do, because not everyone wants to do the same thing. But
Sure.
if you look at anyone that has been successful, they are grinding it out and doing whatever it takes to accomplish their goals. And
Right.
all of that just takes time.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I think patience is always key, but also, like you said, grinding as much as you can. And I'm the same way, man. I'm not exactly where I want to be, even though I feel like, we've been doing a good job as far as you and I have as far as doing what we want to do, but I still think there's a lot more work to be done. And
Totally.
I think that's great advice. So, man, I appreciate it. This was fun. And I mean, like I said, I figured I'd be seeing you this week anyways.
Yeah.
Things would have went to normal with NAB, but I'm really glad you were able to hop on here and kind of be our first guest. I mean, I remember
It was a pleasure.
Yeah,
There was one question that I didn't actually answer that I might as well just answer quick before we cut off. The question with what were some of the challenges of getting gear into Ethiopia? Ethiopia is an interesting situation where if you're a journalist, there's a separate visa for journalists.
Okay.
And so a lot of times you could, if like you're carrying like a couple A7s with a couple lenses, you could probably get in under a tourist visa, which you can get a tourist visa on arrival. However, because of the amount of gear we were taking, we had to get journalist visas, which to get a journalist visa, you have to have a kit list that you submit that, and like a bunch of other paperwork, a letter of invitation from whoever you're doing work for. All of that stuff has to be submitted ahead of time. And then you basically have to hire a fixer to get signatures in 4 different offices or 3 different offices in Addis Ababa. And then you get a paper that is what you submit to get your visa.
That's insane. I thought the Dominican Republic was hard to get into and getting questions, but that sounds like really tedious.
It cost me about $700 just to get our 3 visas, which are 3 visas. The actual visa cost was $35 per person.
Wow. And you're pretty much for those signatures.
Yeah, it's the amount, like basically paying for the fixer to go around and get his foot in the door, and like all of like Yep.
That's absurd, man. Well, I'm glad you answered.
Every country's different, so make like literally research on the country's website what it's like to get in, like what the visa options are and what you have to do.
Yeah, whether it's visas or a form of its own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like some countries have carnets, which is like a passport for your camera equipment. And so just make sure you do the research specifically for camera operating, photography, whatever. If you're going on vacation and bringing in a couple of cameras, it's less of a deal. But if you're bringing a lot of gear like I do, you ask that question.
No, I think that's a good point. And, you know, you're kind of the leader, kind of directing that whole thing. So you're being in charge of that. You're doing that the right way. Now, if you're on a shoot with another company and you have the director or producer that you're traveling with, you need to make sure that they are doing that. And because that's not your job, but you need to make sure that they're doing that, because I've actually ran into issues with that where, you know, once the Ronin case ran through the security thing, that's when that raised some red flags. You know, what is this for? What are you doing? And, you know, luckily we had the whole non-for-profit thing going on as well, but it's just, it's crazy, just some of those rules. So I think that's really, really good advice too.
Yeah. The best question you can ask is there any paperwork I need to be carrying? Because there was like special papers that I carried that showed we had like permission and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Awesome, man. Well, anything else? Like I said, did you have, you kind of gave any tips for viewers, but do you have anything else you'd like to mention that we didn't talk about?
I don't think so. I mean, everyone just keep plugging away, keep doing what you got to do to survive right now. I mean, we're all out there dealing with similar situations. If people have questions, hit me up here on Instagram, give me a follow, shoot me a DM. I love answering questions. And if it's one of those things that honestly, I'll probably make a YouTube video about it if it's a topic that relates that other people might get like a good benefit of the answer for it.
Yeah, for sure.
So don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, ask me or Simon questions. Hit us up directly. You can always get Simon's email as well from him directly and communicate with him. Also check out his YouTube channel. And this has been the Creative Corner. I appreciate you being the first guest, Simon. Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Hopefully next time we chat, we'll be in person, maybe at dinner or something in Vegas.
Hopefully it's sooner than next year in Vegas.
I would hope so too. And let's chat projects once things get back to normal.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome.
All right. Thanks so much, Simon.
Yep. Bye.
Later, brother. See you, man. Awesome, guys. Well, that was it. That was the Creative Corner with our first guest, Simon Eisenbach, and just a lot of good stuff and good information there. And I appreciate you guys hanging around the entire time. And, you know, next Tuesday, we're going to have another guest. So I'm really excited to keep these going. So don't be afraid to tune in, and really, really excited. Callie G5 asked, what's next? Well, we have another guest coming on Tuesday. It'll be next week at, again, 12 Pacific Standard Time. So appreciate you guys. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate that. And we will see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in. And don't be afraid to ask me any questions. Visit Simon's page, visit my page. We'd be more than happy to help you guys out. All things video, photo, and lighting. Again, this was the Creative Corner with Litra Gear. Super excited to have you guys. We'll see you next Tuesday. Peace.